You can help support the channel by heading to our merchandise store and picking up some of our great aircraft designs created by our graphic designer. We have everything from fighters to transport aircraft, which you can choose to have printed on t-shirts, mugs, stickers and much more. Head to the description below and click the links and pick up your design today. Thank you and enjoy. David, when did you first become interested in aviation?
I've been interested in aviation since a young age. My family's been always involved in aviation, particularly my mother, who's still cabin crew to this day. And before September the 11th, I was able to go to work with her on a standby flight, and I was able to visit the flight deck, go and check out everything. I was also very lucky to go on many holidays with my mother's staff travel, and I was able to visit the flight deck, and I used to sit up there for hours just in silence, just in awe of the people in front of me, and I knew from day one this was exactly what I wanted to do.
Absolutely. So can you talk us, moving on to your PPL and then your commercial air training as well, and how long that took, and did you always want to go that route?
Yeah, so there are two routes in terms of commercial aviation that people can take. There is the integrated course or the modular course. Now, the integrated course, you would need to pretty much leave home and spend some time abroad for 12 to 18 months. So it's really geared for those young people coming out of university or coming out of school that have that funding to enable them to do that. The other route is the modular route, and this is geared for those people that want to remain in the country, and they want to they still have a full-time job. They want to train alongside that, and it just provides a bit more flexibility. They don't need to move abroad. They might have a family at home. So I was working full-time, and I went down the modular route, and up until when I prematurely left school, I was literally been working in full-time jobs since the age of 16. And I always knew I wanted to be a pilot, and I didn't think it was possible. Mm-hmm. But at the time, in around 2008, I was a car salesman. And when the global recession hit back then, nobody was buying BMWs or Audis. So I thought maybe now's the time for a change. So then I started looking into it and started looking into the cost. And I had a few trial flights when I was younger, and I knew it was exactly what I wanted to do. So I got it all together, and I went down to my local airfield in Taton Hill, and I said, well, I want to be an airline pilot. But I knew full well there was going to be lots of hoops to jump through, and a lot of the learning would be down to me. So I started off at Taton Hill, my PPL, and would you believe, if you put your mind to it and you really focus, you can get a private pilot's license within a matter of six weeks. That means a lot of hard work. You are in the airfield every single day. It's also weather dependent. It's also cost dependent as well. But if you put your mind to it, this is it's completely possible. I started my PPL start of August, and by mid-September, I had the license. So that was the PPL side, and I didn't want to be one of these people that just flew locally, took friends up and flew over their house and showed them the Midlands. I just wanted to do a bit more with the hour building, because you have to have a minimum number of hours in order to get that commercial pilot's license. So my first trip was in a Cessna 152, flew down to Goodwood, literally the week after I passed my private pilot's license. I had a aunt in Northern Ireland, so I took my grandmother across the Irish Sea to Northern Ireland. So, but then I started going further and further afield. And one week I had a bit of time off from work, and I needed to get a chunk of hours in before I started my commercial pilot's training. And I said to my two friends, Carl and Tom, I said, where do you want to go? And immediately, we were all in our early 20s then, immediately they said Ibiza. And I just laughed it off completely. 2 days later, we drove down the M5 to Suair in Gloucester, or whatever the name of the aviation shop was. And this was in the days before pilots were using iPads in the aircraft. And we wiped all the charts off the shelf for France and Spain. And that weekend, we took off from Taton Hill to fly to Ibiza in a PA-28 Warrior. And I told my dad about the plan, and he thought it was crazy. And I was working for my dad alongside my flight training at the time. And I said, Dad, I want to go to Ibiza in this plane. And he said to me, well, you've only got the weekend off. And I was, no, right, okay, we can still make it work. So I filled out all the customs forms, and we were in Taton Hill, and we were prepping all the aircraft. And you have to fill out customs forms in order to leave the country, and then it's up to the custom officers whether they come to the airfield to do an inspection. Well, that day they decided to do this. They saw me and my two friends flying to Ibiza, and they probably thought, "What's going on here?" So they turned up. They had a chat. They thought it was bonkers what we were doing, and we started making our way to Ibiza. We flew to a place called Poitiers. Then next morning we carried on to near Barcelona, airfield called Sabadell. Then ran main Barcelona airport, and that Saturday lunchtime we landed in main Ibiza airport. We had one night out in Ibiza airport. Of course, I wasn't drinking. And the next day we flew back. And these were the days that Ibiza airport, you can park up next to the DJ's private jets and pay €14 for landing an overnight park in Ibiza main airport. And then the next day flew into Perpignan, France, stayed overnight, and then we flew Perpignan, Le Mans, back into Taton Hill. So that's how my hour building went. We did a couple of trips to Paris as well, and that's what gave me the hours in order for me to start my commercial pilot's license. Now, the commercial pilot's license, I did that down in Bristol with a company that was down there at the time called Bristol Aviation. And you have to dedicate 3 months of your life in order to go through 3 different types of licenses. One is your multi-engine rating, then it's your instrument rating, and then it's your commercial pilot's license. And then after you've got your commercial pilot's license, you now have a license in order to fly passengers, and you can do that as a single pilot. But then once you've got your commercial pilot's license, you need to go on what is known as an MCC, which will then allow you to go and get a job with on a multi-crew aircraft such as the 737, for example. That is generally, in a nutshell, how it works. And the intensive course is exactly the same route, but you move abroad and you do it over a period of 12 to 18 months. Whereas the modular route, it's exactly the same route, but it may take you 3 to 5 years to go through it, and it's a bit economically friendly as well.
So let's talk about, you actually got a job with Susis Air in Indonesia. How did this happen, and was it your first choice? Because first of all, it sounds fascinating, and what a amazing place to go to fly as well.
I'd never actually been to Indonesia before Susis Air as well. How it actually happened is I went for an interview for an airline in this country, and went for the big assessment day. But I was one of the ones who unfortunately didn't make it, as it happens quite regularly to many people. It doesn't always happen the first time for you. But I met a guy on my MCC course, the multi-crew course, who were also doing the same interview as me as well. He got the job and I didn't. But he had come from this little company called Suair, and he gave me an email address which was actually Susie's husband, and this was January 2011, and I typed an email and sent it off, not thinking anything about it. And I told my parents, and they started looking on YouTube, typing in Susis Air. What's this company called Susis Air? And they called me up and they said, no, don't even think about it. This is not what you want. This is not what you wanted, right? This is not your. You wanted to be an airline pilot. You didn't want to go and do that. And I basically said to them, but what choice do I have right now? There's not many airlines recruiting right now. I can just wait and just keep renewing my license every single year, or I can broaden my horizons and move across the other side of the world and go and join an outfit like Susis Air. I got the call up for an interview in Munich. One of the senior management pilots had actually left Susis Air, but he was doing interviews in Europe for Susis Air. So I flew to Munich. It was actually my birthday, March 1st, 2011. And I went for the interview in this little apartment in Munich, did some online computer tests, and had the face-to-face interview. And Gerald, who interviewed me, he said, right, we'll be in touch in about 4 weeks' time. 4 days later, they contacted me to say I got the job, and can I be in Singapore in 3 weeks' time to start the visa process.
Wow.
So then a lot of things had to change within a short period of time, and I went to my parents and, look, I've got this opportunity. Like, I'd be stupid to say no to it, and they've supported me. They supported me throughout, and they supported the idea, and that was it. In 3 weeks, got everything together, packed everything, rented out my apartment, and flew out to Singapore 3 weeks later, having never stepped foot in Indonesia or never been next to a Susis Air aircraft.
I mean, that's incredible. So let's get into that. So first of all, what was the role of Susis Air, and what aircraft did you have to start learning, and what was the role of the whole company itself?
So Susis Air, Susis Air started as a company, and it was never an airline to start off with. They had two Cessna Grand Caravans, which was the aircraft that I flew, and they were predominantly into fishing, and they had these aircraft based in Java, and they would be flying fresh fish and lobster from their base in West Java to Jakarta, Singapore, and around that area. That was their business. They were not an airline to start off with. Then the tsunami happened, the Indonesian Thai Malaysian tsunami, and the Indonesian government, of course, they needed support, and aid was coming in from all around the world, which was great, but they actually needed to get into those areas, particularly in Western Sumatra. So Susie said, have my aircraft. They're Cessna Grand Caravans. They can land on roads, strips. They will land wherever you put them. And that's what she did. She lent them the aircraft to the government to ferry aid in and out of the tsunami hit areas. And after so long, the company was struggling because they were giving these aircraft free of charge to the cause, which was very admirable. But then the company was suffering, and they were going to go bankrupt because of this. So, but then the government then turned around to Susie and said, "We have all this aid money. We want to rent the aircraft off you," and that's how Susis Air was created. And since then, they have a scheme called Parentis, and what the Indonesian government try and do, they try and encourage the local economy using airlines like Susis Air flying from larger airports to the smaller strips, to as I was saying, to encourage the local economy between the local communities and the bigger cities. And every year, the government awards all these contracts to all different companies, and one of those companies is Susis Air. So that is predominantly the business model, and they went from 2 aircraft, and I think nowadays Susis Air has around 40 aircraft, consisting of Cessna Grand Caravans predominantly, Pilatus Porters, the really short field stuff, an air tractor, and which can ferry fuel in and out of communities, and also a couple of helicopters, and they've also got some private jet Piaggio Avantis, if you know them. They're the strange spaceship looking aircraft with the propellers on the back, and I believe she has 3 or 4 of those. So that's what Susis Air is now, and they've gone from operations in Sumatra, and now they cover right across in Indonesia. It's not just what you see on the television over in West Papua. They cover Sumatra, they cover Borneo, they cover Jakarta, they cover Sulawesi, right across the country. Now, the problem is, and you're probably going to ask me, why do they want you to fly for Susis Air? Why do they want all these expat pilots from across the world? Now, for the local Indonesian pilots that go to flight school, just like how I did, a lot of them are government-sponsored flying schools. So then, once they come out of flying school, they get picked up by the Indonesian airlines. So, of course, to a young Indonesian pilot coming out of flight school, they don't want to fly Cessna Grand Caravans for Susis Air. They want to fly Airbuses and Boeings for Garuda Indonesia, for example. So there was a real problem, and that's the reason why Susis Air started recruiting expat pilots. There was, at the time when I was there was probably 250 pilots stretched across Indonesia. Predominantly expats from all different countries: UK, South Africa, Canada, New Zealand, Australia. And for these pilots, they used Susis Air as a stepping stone in order to get that experience before moving back to their home countries or a different country to go on to airline life. But I must say, some people loved it that much that some of them never went to the airlines. They wanted to carry on out there. Some people have been there many years, and some of them wanted to go into corporate aviation. Not everybody wanted to work for a low-cost airline.
Very interesting. So, can you tell us about your experience of flying and also living? Obviously, it was your first time over there, and what was like for you personally?
So, the first, so we went out to Singapore when we first went to sort out our visas, and then we flew into Jakarta. Never been to Jakarta before, and it took us from the airport to go into the city to our hotel about 4 hours in a taxi. Wow. I was thinking to myself, is this what life is going to be like now? And we had a look around. Jakarta, and of course we weren't experts in Jakarta, and I was thinking, I'm a little bit unsure about this. Have I made the right decision? But then we were the next morning after we'd done our medicals in Jakarta. That was an experience. I go through medicals every year, and in Indonesia I have to go through the medical every 6 months, and it's pretty interesting to have a medical there. You are in the waiting room with dozens of people, and there's no privacy, there's no nothing. It's you're all there for the one thing, cabin crew, pilots all together, and that was a strange experience. But the next day we were picked up and we were taken to the airport, and we first saw the Susis Air aircraft, the Cessna Grand Caravan, and we boarded the flight and we flew down to where our head office was, Pangandaran, and we landed on the beach, and that was it for me. That was the private strip that for Susie Air, the beach strip, and I thought, yeah, that was really cool, and this is exactly what I want to do. So then we moved into the compound where Susie, the owner, actually lives, and we all lived together. And we were on that course for about three to 4 weeks. And because there's no simulators for the Cessna Grand Caravan, but now Susie Air does have a fixed base simulator, all of our training was done actually in the aircraft itself. So probably spent about five to 10 hours training around the local area, ticking all the boxes. Before then, we went out to our bases, line training. My first base was a place called Medan, which is Sumatra, which is a pretty large city, and we lived in this large private compound, huge houses, swimming pools. And we all lived together as pilots. There was probably 4 to 5 pilots per house. And I thought to myself, I could really get used to this. Fair enough, we weren't being paid very much, but we were supplied with accommodation and food and laundry. And I thought, I could really get used to this. The type of flying that they do in Sumatra is mainly the longer strips. They're mainly paved tarmac runways, flying either further down south to touristy resorts, Lake Toba, or across to surfing resorts. But then we still went up to Aceh province to do the government routes as well. So that is Medan. It was a very, very nice introduction to Susie Air. Then I got put in Jakarta, in the center of the city where everything happened, and we were a bus service in the Cessna Grand Caravan between Jakarta and Pangandaran, which was also a tourist destination for predominantly local Indonesians. Before then, I started making my way more east, and I ended up in Borneo, which was the houses got smaller. As time progressed, the houses got smaller and everything became a bit more challenging. The strips that we were flying to in Borneo, a lot of them weren't really paved, had no large terminal. Some of the strips you would need to be specially checked out for as well. And that was a good introduction with what I was going to experience next, which was Irian Jaya, or West Papua, which is where a lot of what people see on YouTube. And Papua and Susie Air was treated as a separate company to the rest of Susie Air, purely because of how different it is. When you go out to Papua, there is no your social life is with each other. Okay, when at night you are in the house, you are in the compound, you don't go out. So you have
sounds
to,
like Big Brother almost.
It is a bit like Big Brother, and what would happen was that whenever anybody did a visa run to Singapore where they had decent internet, they would take a large internet hard drive, and they would download Game of Thrones, Suits, Breaking everything on this hard drive. Then the hard drive would be brought back to Papua or Borneo, and it would be shared amongst all of the pilots all together on their laptops, or we all watched it together. But that was life in Papua. We were advised not to go out for our own safety, but my personal experience with the local people is that, yes, with the local people, they're very unsure of us being there, but when you actually communicate with them and speak to them, you have big smiles, and they're extremely welcoming, and it was a really, really nice experience. Papua is a completely different topic altogether. It absolutely blew my mind for the time that I was there. I remember I first went to a place called Jayapura, which is Papua's capital, provincial capital, and I remember flying to this strip called Borme. I think I was silent all the way through descent. It was on an incline like this. It was paved, and literally you are in a climb as you land on the runway going up to the top of the hill, and there are hundreds of people at the top of the hill in Borme staring at the aircraft as it lands, and it just absolutely blew my mind. And in these strips, they have a representative that works for Susis Air that deals with all the money, deals with all the cash. And the plan was we were meant to be going from this place in Borme to another strip somewhere. But how we actually communicated is that, because obviously there is no weather reporting as such. There isn't like we have here where you'd be able to find the weather for every airport in Europe. It's either a text message or a phone saying, can you see the sun? Is there any cloud? Is it windy? Right? And that was essentially it from this person on the ground. So we would take off our Borme. When you're departing down the runway, you're actually in a descent, and you can actually see the instruments. You are in a descent, and it's a double rotation, because you're rotating to get off the runway, but then you're rotating to get actually into a climb. And I remember we had this family on board, and they had plastic bags filled with all of their belongings. They were going to move to this village, and I can't remember the name, but we couldn't get into the strip, and we said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to have to go to Oxbow instead." I think that was the name of the strip, and no argument, no nothing. They looked at each other, shrugged their shoulders, and went with it. And we went off to somewhere else and left them there. So that was one side of it, where we were carrying the local people around. But there's a lot of construction in Papua as well, and also fuel. So we used to fly out of a place called Nibiri, I seem to remember, and with fuel barrels behind us in the Cessna Caravan, and we were flying the fuel barrels out to the local communities, and we would land in a strip probably 6,000 or 7,000 feet elevation, and what the local people would do, they would drive up in mopeds, meet the aircraft, and then the cargo door would be opened, and they would put a rubber tire underneath the aircraft, and what they would do is they would roll the fuel barrel off out of the cargo door and bounce it off this tire, okay, so it doesn't bounce and combust. So and we were doing that every day during my time in Papua, and it's there was always a bit of nerves whenever we took off and we were listening out for the straps that were attached to the fuel barrels, just to make sure that we're still still holding. But that's how it was. We also carried building materials as well for the local communities where they were building churches, and it was completely and utterly different to anything that I experience now during my job now. So that it was really rewarding, but it also had its dangers as well. Unfortunately, I lost a few colleagues out there in plane accidents, and for me, after a couple of times of being in Papua, stints in Papua, that was enough for me. It was I've seen the highs and the lows, and I decided, right, okay, I'm going to go back to Borneo. and then later on in Sumatra, and enjoy whatever time I have in Susi Air left. And some of the nice things as well that we would experience is we would do private surfing charters as well. So it's a whole massive mix. There would be private surfing charters where we would fill the Cessna Caravan with 8 Australians, and their surfboards were actually strapped next to them inside the caravan, and they were all in together, and we would fly to a private surf strip.
Wow.
Somewhere called Politello off West Sumatra. We also did a Australian gold mining contract as well, where we would our job was we would get up in the morning and we would do about 4 flights backwards and forwards between the gold mine and this city called Ternate, which is actually on the side of a volcano. Go backwards and forwards 4 times, and then we would sit in Ternate for 6 hours, probably watching, having a look around the city or watching our hard drives or whatever. And then we would go, then we would do 4 flights backwards and forwards to ferry all the crew back to the gold mine. And we were actually taken into the gold mine as well and given a huge tour. And it's just stuff that you would never, ever experience. And it was, I would recommend it. Although the highs and not only lows, I would recommend it to anybody, and that's the reason why some of my friends are still out there now.
That's incredible, and it sounds like you had a great time. But if you can briefly describe also, like people can actually watch what you did. You were on Channel 4, Worst Place to Be a Pilot. Can you tell us about how this came about so our viewers can get an insight into that?
Yeah, so it was it was an interesting time. It was a bit later on in my Susi Air career, and one of my colleagues, Guy, he knew some people that worked for a TV production company, and they saw what we did and Guy's photos and videos, and they said, "Wow, we could really make something of this. We could make a TV show out of this." So we were discussing it, and we were looking into the production company. There were rumours going around that the production company had done, what was the documentary that used to be on, the Big Gypsy Wedding or
right, okay,
years ago. It was the same production company. There was rumours going around, and we were really unsure, because at the end of the day, when we do these when we do these documentaries, millions of people are going to be watching us, and it could affect our careers in the future. So the production company came out and they met with us all and did a bit of test filming, and they actually had to go and see Susi herself to discuss this with her, and we agreed, right, let's give it a go. They would keep it as realistic, and they'd simply just follow us around, and they would piece it all together and create a documentary. That was in 2014, and we were filming it in April and May, and it started going out across the world in Discovery Channel, Channel 4, SBS in Australia, and we just literally we started having people tell us from Jakarta that aspiring pilots had watched the TV show, and they were getting 500 applications a day.
Wow.
For the Susi Air. It was crazy, and they couldn't get back to people because there was just too many. And then the whole world found out about Susi Air, and it was like, from all of us struggling to get jobs, sending out applications, people weren't really interested in our single engine time, to now doors were opening and we were getting interviews, and we were then moving back to our home countries and getting other jobs. It just changed everything for us. But as I was saying earlier, some people loved it that much they chose to stay. And we catch up every now and again when I fly out to Indonesia, out to Bali, and they still love it like the day that they joined. So they followed us around, and it went out on TV. We got some jobs, and still to this day, when I'm at work and I'm an instructor for an airline in the UK now, and still I'm having young kids walk past me in the coffee machine and turn to me and go, "You used to work for Susie Air." Still, even now,
Wow.
like 10 years later, people are still watching the show, and it's just incredible. And we hope that it's inspired a lot of people to not go down the same route of not always wanting to go direct to the airlines, but just to go and see something different and go and travel the world, and before they settle down. And we did do a lot of traveling. We worked 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and we used to find a different country to go to, whether it be Nepal, Indonesia, Malaysia. Some people did the Everest Base Camp as well. And when probably around about 10 times a year, like for example, I was at East Midlands a few weeks ago, and my friend from Canada is now a captain on the 767, and he randomly flew into East Midlands that day, and we went out. I hadn't seen him in 10 years. Went out for a curry, and it was like 10 years hadn't passed.
Yeah.
And that's what the special Susie Air community is, and we all keep in touch with each other.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds incredible, and what a time you had. And yeah, if folks can they still find that online, that documentary from Channel 4? Is it on their site? Is it on YouTube? Where can we
Yeah,
find that?
yeah. It might be still on all four. It's still doing the rounds in Australia at the moment. But all the show, if you type in "worst place to be a pilot" in YouTube, all the episodes are on there, and all the different videos from me and all my colleagues and friends. You'll see lots of stuff, interesting videos out there, and all the episodes if you wanted to watch the TV show.
Yeah, and I've watched a couple, and I have to say, well worth it. So go and check it out. But David, let's move on to your time on the 737. How did this come about, and were you happy with that move?
So it was coming to the TV show had just been released, and we were all in a very good place. There was lots of interest in us, and we were really enjoying ourselves. But you always have to think about the next plan. What do you want from your life? Is your life going to be in Indonesia doing this kind of flying, or do you have aspirations to go back home? And there isn't that kind of flying back at home unless you go into the corporate world, which some people have. And then I had I was on holiday in Thailand at the time, and I saw something come up on Facebook that the airline Norwegian was recruiting, and I just applied for it and thought, didn't think anything of it, and didn't think I would hear anything. And a couple of weeks later, I did hear something, and they called me for the interview in Oslo, and you have to go through all the formalities, the sim check, the interview. And we were sat there. I flew all the way up to Norway, and we were sat there in the interview. And the guy who's interviewing me, who's a captain still now for Norwegian, he was looking at my CV and he goes, "Susie, I watched this show last week." And then the whole interview just suddenly changed from what I knew about the 737 to my time in Susie Air, and we were told we would find out by the end of the week. And I was thinking, okay, if I get the job, then I might not go back. But they didn't get back to me at the end of the week. They actually got back to us 5 weeks later, and I'd actually gone home to pop to see my parents, and then flew down back to Indonesia, back at work, and then suddenly an email pops up to say, "Congratulations, we'd like to take you on at Norwegian." And that was it. So I did my type rating with Norwegian, had a lot of fun, spent time initially in Norway before being based in Gatwick. Did a bit of transatlantic flying as well, out of Ireland and Scotland over to New York and Boston. Lived in Chicago for near Chicago, Milwaukee for 6 months, doing some wet lease charters. Um, Also done some UNICEF flights as well, down to Djibouti in Africa and delivering aid for UNICEF. So it, Norwegian kind of reminded me of like an airline version of Susie Air. Everybody kind of knew each other. Everybody was commuting, living in hotels, and some of the flying that we would be doing up in northern Norway, it was really enjoyable. And then coming up to COVID, of course, when COVID appeared, I had to make a move rather quickly. So now I'm with another company now as a sim instructor on the 737, also a captain as well, flying out of Birmingham. And yeah, I still enjoy it. I still miss a lot of my old colleagues and friends now fly private jets, and they're flying in and out of Africa and all these different places around the world. So I miss that element and missing the traveling and experiencing all these different places. But I know I'm happy with what I'm doing right now, and having a bit of stability and growing up and catching up with my old friends and hearing about their stories. And yeah, yeah, I'm happy at the moment. I miss it a lot though.
So there's another thing, another string to your bow, as it were. You're also the co-founder of the Flyer Watch Company. How did this happen, David?
This happened. This happened last year, and I've always wanted to. A bit about me before aviation. I left school prematurely, let's say, and I was working in McDonald's, KFC, and a car salesman, as I mentioned before. And I was lucky enough to get all these opportunities and be in the right place at the right time in order to get to where I am today. And at the end of the day, when anybody thinks about becoming a pilot, the first thing they think about, oh, that's expensive. And it's a shame, really. Pilot training isn't really treated like a university degree in the UK. Some countries do class it as kind of university type training, and there is funding for it, government-backed funding, but not here in the UK. So a lot of people find that it's out of reach for them. So me and my father, we were drumming up some ideas about what we can do to help this. And we're big lovers of watches, as you would expect from a pilot. Most pilots love their watches, and we love our watches as well. And we set about starting up a watch company, not only to sell people a watch, a very nice watch that's made in Switzerland, but our main goal of this company is to give back. And the main business plan is that our profits from the company help go towards PPL scholarships that are administered here in the UK, and we are going to be looking at other countries abroad to set up similar things. So every watch purchase from the Flyer Watch Company, a proportion of those profits will go towards a PPL scholarship. And we don't know how many scholarships. That will depend on how many watches we sell. The more watches we sell, the more scholarships we'll be able to provide. And it's going very well, and we're having a lot of good feedback from it. But what we actually want is the customers to get involved and be part of the community and follow that journey of that person, because they might not be able to afford a private pilot's license. They might not be able to give up the time to get a private pilot's license due to family or work commitments. And we set up the brand to help with that, and we want to really make a difference. And then once that's all been set up, we actually have a new watch that is being launched very soon. So actually, nobody knows about this.
Exclusive.
Yeah, it is an exclusive. It's me and you, Mike, that know
Brilliant.
about it, and all the people listening to this. So we have started a relationship with the charity Airability, and if you go on to our website, flywatches.com, after you listen to the podcast, you will see the information about the Airability watch. So we are releasing an Airability watch with the Airability logo on the front and back. And the big thing about this watch is for every watch that is purchased, a aspiring disabled aviator will get a flight experience for every single watch. And they'll be invited down to Blackbush to Airability. They will be given a guided tour around the Airability facilities and the amazing work that they do there. People have gone on to get their private pilot's licenses. People go there just for an hour, just to see what it's like, to see whether they like aviation. And it is truly amazing, the work that they do there. It's really, really inspiring. So we wanted to get involved, and we wanted to help. And that's what we've come up with. So you're able to pre-order that now, and they should be arriving in the next couple of weeks. But also, we want to, for everybody that purchases the watch, they are going to be invited themselves down to Airability at Blackbush, and they are going to be given a tour of the facilities, meet the people behind Airability as well. And I'm really excited about it. I think there's going to be some big things from there. But yeah, it's there you go. There's your exclusive, Mike.
Incredible. I mean, the design is absolutely beautiful, and not only do you get like an amazing watch, you get like the behind the scenes, and it goes to a good cause as well. So you get the whole package, as it were.
Yeah, yeah. The watch, we wanted it to be Swiss made. It's got a 2-year warranty with it. It's also got a return policy. We'll ship it out to you free of charge, and you're going to be part of the community, and you're going to see what a difference that purchase makes.
Absolutely. So if you can remind our viewers where we can find the watch, your website, and you on social media, but we'll link everything in the description, but if you can just read it out for us, David.
Yep. So our website is flywatches.com, and we are on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, LinkedIn, and now TikTok.
Brilliant.
And you'll be able to find us if you look for us at Flywatches, all one word.
A few personal questions to wrap up this interview, if you're happy with that, David.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right. Do you have any hobbies?
Yes, I do. I do have hobbies. It's mainly, well, of course, flying is a hobby as well. I do have my private pilot's license. I do a bit of private flying as well in a PA-28, so I'll keep that up to date. I'm also into motorsport in a big way as well. Head down to Goodwood for Festival of Speed.
Nice.
It has a bit of an aviation element to it as well. Love traveling. That was the big aim, was to my aim was I wanted to go and see every single country in the world, and I think it changes on a yearly basis, but I believe there's 196 countries at the moment, and I've been to 84 of them. And when I was out in Milwaukee, I wanted to go to every single US state, and I only have one remaining, which is Alaska. So
impressive.
That's what I've done. That's what I've done. A lot of my spare time has been spent on so far.
Brilliant stuff. Favorite aircraft you've flown?
I've got to say it, the Cessna Grand Caravan.
Yeah. One you would like to fly, either past or present?
Oh, that's a good one. If anybody's who's watching or listening wants to help the dream out, I would absolutely love to fly a Spitfire, and I've never done it. I've always looked at the experiences, and it hasn't happened yet. So I keep looking at the guys down in Goodwood and the Spitfires down there, and think one day that's all I would ever want to fly.
Brilliant stuff. And one last question, just to wrap up, is from one of our viewers. What was your favourite place to land in Indonesia or as a bush pilot?
Favorite place to land as a bush pilot? Okay, I'm going to split this answer into two. Um, so my favorite place to land as a pilot would be, the first one would be in West Papua, which is the first strip I ever went into when I experienced Papua, when I had that amazing feeling of just silence and I couldn't get any words out, and that was Borme. I will never forget that day. That was a pretty incredible day. And the other one would be Pulatelo, which was where we used to do our surfing charters, and we used to fly off West Sumatra with surfboards and Australians and land on this little strip for them to have their surfing holiday. So that was a pretty special place to go to.
And when you landed in this place, just like as a follow-up, did you get to spend a bit of time there, or was it basically pack up your stuff ready to go again, or did you get a bit of time to do your own thing?
It depends. So if we were flying from base to base and we were having a long day, for example, we had a base in Borneo called Balikpapan, and we used to have a base up in the north called Tarakan. So we would do the schedule, 4 flights in a day, but we might end up at our other base in Tarakan. And you would think that, okay, they're going to stay in hotels and stuff, but Susis Air actually had a house at every base.
Oh,
So
right.
we'd actually move from one house to the other. And so that was but otherwise it would be straight there and back. And flights in Papua, I believe my friend Matt, who's probably watching right now, I think he claims to have flown one of the shortest commercial flights in the world, which is literally seconds from one mountain to another in his Platter's Porter. But then it could range to a flight that's 1 hour 50, 2 hours 10 minutes. We could ferry the aircraft on a ferry flight from one side of Indonesia to the other. It completely varies.
Brilliant stuff. Well, we're going to link everything in the description that we talked about below, so go and check out that new watch. Absolutely amazing. But David, thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing your story.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Cheers.